The contemporary Swiss philosopher Alain de Botton is an atheist, but he's not one of those angry, anti-religious atheists. In fact, there are things he admires about religiosity. In his book Religion for Atheists, he makes the point that there are many good practices of religions and religious people which atheists have effectively thrown out with the bathwater of disbelief. And his point is that atheists should try to reclaim some of those practices for themselves. All the more reason for us who are believers to see the value in our practices. So it's actually a helpful book for us as well. One of his central points is about the way that we approach learning and understanding. He said atheists who value rationality above most or almost every other thing, he said, have a very limited approach to how we learn, expecting that in universities in particular, that we can simply lecture a group of people with a group of facts and they'll hear it once and they'll absorb it and understand it forever. And that's the end of that. We don't need to speak of it again. But he says, we know, of course, that that's not the case. But we find that approach creepy into so many areas of our education. Lots of us now do online seminars for learning and for work. Many of us watch things like TED Talks. But again, this is very much the single speaker speaking once to the listener who is meant to absorb all the information once and then be able to hold on it forever. And Botton says, we know that we as humans don't actually operate that way. And he says that what we can learn from religions is that religions have patterns and seasons and repetitions, which allow people to learn and to relearn and to revisit and to deepen understanding. In the church, of course, we have seasons, like seasons of preparation like Advent and Lent, and seasons of celebration, Christmas and Easter. That we have patterns of feast days and of preparation days, and that we repeat the message again and again. And that's very much true for today's feast, the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, which is effectively Christmas Part 2. It is the Christmas message, but really told from the perspective or the lens of Mary. Now, the Solemnity of Mother of God is always a week after Christmas, and this year it just happens to be on a Sunday because Christmas is a Sunday as well. So what does this Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, teach us? It's a bit of a challenging term, Mary, Mother of God. It's a difficult one for Protestants because the idea of Mary being Mother of God seems to exalt her far, far too much. But we go to the origins of the term Mother of God, and it's actually from a Greek term, Theotokos, meaning Mary, the bearer of God. And there we get the clue. This is actually speaking about the nature of Jesus, to say that Jesus is God. Jesus is Son of God, but he is fully, truly divine. And this is something which was not clear to the early church. It took a long time for the church to arrive at the understanding that Jesus was completely God as well as completely human. There were various versions of that understanding. Was Jesus God who just appeared to be human? Was Jesus just a human who appeared to be God? Or eventually the Orthodox answer was that he in fact was completely both. But then the question was, at what point did Jesus become truly God? And there were many who argued this was actually at the baptism, that when Jesus was baptized as an adult by John the Baptist, we hear the Spirit descends upon him like a dove. And so it was the thought that perhaps it was at that moment that Jesus became divine, became Son of God. But the answer we still hold on to today is that Jesus was God. He was God from the moment of his conception. He is the pre-existent Word of God who took flesh and human nature in the womb of Mary. And so the one who was always God became human. That's the way we always talk, that Jesus became human for us and with us. And so from the very moment of conception in Mary's womb, Jesus was God, completely God and completely human. And so we can say that Mary was the mother of God. Mary bore God within her womb. But again, this is not actually trying to elevate Mary any further beyond her already dignified place. It is to say who Jesus is and to define his nature, his two natures of divine and human. So what does that mean for us? If we already accept that Jesus is God and this is good, and Christmas is his coming to earth, what more do we need to say? Well, it's good that we have a second feast day to reiterate this. And we'll have another one next week for Epiphany, where we hear that the wise men come to visit and recognize in Jesus his divinity in the gift of frankincense, as well as his kingship in the gift of gold and his future suffering and death in the gift of myrrh. But that's next week's story. So this week, we celebrate the beautiful complexity of the nature of Jesus, which defies human words. Books and books and books are written on the nature of Jesus Christ, completely divine, completely human. And no amount of words will ever exhaust the mystery of who Jesus is, because no words will ever exhaust the mystery of who God is. And that's probably what we can take from today, for us to surrender and be open to the mystery and the complexity. To say God is mysterious is not to say we can't know anything about God or say anything about God. We can say much and know much, but we can never know everything or say everything. And so we should try to stay away from simple answers which try to overly simplify who God is and who Jesus is. That because although there is often an attraction to find very simple answers, but this is often because life is complex and sometimes life seems scary, and to have something very concrete seems good to hold on to. But those very simple answers can lead to fundamentalism. It can lead to division about who's right, who's wrong, who's in, who's out. And that's something which is really so opposite the message of Jesus. Because we look at Jesus' ministry was always about inclusion, about bringing people back in from the outside. St. Paul tells that Jesus came to reconcile us to God and to one another. And so reconciliation is what Jesus is on about, not division, not separateness. So today let's separate Mary's beautiful love for Jesus as she bore him in her womb and cradled him in her arms and loved him all the way to the foot of the cross and beyond when he was risen. That we too are called to that same love for Jesus, that same tender love, a love which is for a Christ whom we can never fully understand, and yet we are fully known and loved by.